Duncan's Bluff. It was winter time on the island of Sodor. Duncan was busy puffing through the white mountains and the frosty forest. He was proud to be a narrow-gauge engine. Duncan was delivering coal to the villagers. They were going to need extra coal from the main coaling plant, so James and Thomas were pulled to the wharf. Duncan chuffed in to talk to James. Teased Duncan, wheezed James crossly. Duncan chuffed cheekily, snorted James. This made Duncan cross. Chuffed Duncan. Puffed James. Chuffed Duncan. But Duncan was worried. James was big and strong. He puffed nervously. So Duncan delivered all his coal as fast as he could. He puffed. But when Duncan arrived back at the wharf, James was waiting for him. Teased James. Duncan looked at the long line of freight cars. There was plenty of coal for the villagers there. But Duncan didn't want to lose. He tooted. Huffed James. James raced back to the coaling plant. And Duncan delivered the coal to the villagers. Now all the villagers had plenty of coal. Duncan puffed back to the wharf. But when Duncan arrived at the wharf, there were still lots more coal cars waiting. So Duncan decided to play a trick. He puffed. Soon all the freight cars were hidden. Duncan chuffed cheerfully. James had collected lots more freight cars from the coaling plant. He was puffing harder than he had ever puffed, and he was using lots of coal. At last, James arrived at the wharf. There was Duncan. Teased Duncan. Puffed James. Puffed Duncan. James still had to take the children to the concert, but he had been puffing so hard that he had used up all the coal in his tender, and soon he ground to a halt. That evening, Mr. Percival came to see Duncan. He announced. Duncan felt terrible. He thought about all the coal cars he had hidden. He thought about James, and then he thought about the children. He wheezed to Mr. Percival. The narrow-gauge controller listened hard. He said slowly. Whistled Duncan. So Duncan collected one of the coal cars he had hidden. Snow started to fall. Duncan rattled along the icy tracks. Until at last, Duncan found James. Snorted James. Chuffed Duncan. Duncan added. But James told Duncan that he was a really useful engine too. He puffed. The coal was quickly loaded into James's tender. Soon his fire was roaring, and his boiler was as warm as toast. He steamed off to collect the children. Duncan felt happy. Huffed Duncan. And he chuffed happily away to deliver more coal to the snowy villagers.